to today's Scholl Canyon Landfill virtual tour. We're so excited to have you here on this Saturday. My name is Genesis Rodriguez. I'm a public affairs specialist with the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. And we have an exciting tour for you here today. We've taken a lot of photos and videos of Scholl Canyon Landfill, and we hope that it'll give you an experience probably even better than if we had been there in person. So we have our two experts on the call today, our speakers. Our main speaker is Basil Hewitt, who's a supervising engineer with the Los Angeles County Sanitation District's Public Information Office. And then we also have Scott Partridge, who's a supervising engineer in our solid waste department. And so we have them here. And with that, also questions. We love questions. So feel free to ask away and use the Q&A feature though. Q&A feature, it's located at the bottom of your screen with an icon, the little chat icon. So you can ask your questions there. That helps us stay a bit more organized and being able to field the questions. Or if you would like to ask your question, in person, you can use the raise hand feature and I will ask you to unmute yourself. And then we will go from there. And then Basil, I think we are ready for you. We can see your controls.
Okay, so you can see my screen. Well, thank you, Genesis. Yeah. And good morning, everyone. And I will try to make this the best experience as possible. Thank you, Genesis and Scott. Prior to the pandemic, we would do these tours in person. We'd rent a bus and we'd walk around the landfill. And so last year and a couple of months, we've been trying to duplicate that experience for the folks we serve. And so we want as interactive as possible, as Genesis said. So let's get started. So sanitation districts, who are we? Sanitation districts of Los Angeles County. We serve 5.6 of the 10 million people that live in LA County. We have 24 sanitation districts that provide this service. And our service is mainly wastewater and solid waste management. And we've been doing this for a long time. So we manage wastewater and solid waste for 78 of the 88 cities in LA County. And in managing that wastewater and solid waste, we try to convert that waste into resources such as recycled water that you see here, the lower left of the screen, green energy that we get from either landfill or wastewater treatment plant, or even just recycled commodities that we try to pull out of the waste stream. We were formed in 1923. These are the three gentlemen that formed our agency. The guy in the middle was the chairperson of the board of supervisor back in the day, Supervisor McLennan, and the guy on the right was our first chief engineer, Albert Kendall Warren. And we were formed, and the guy on the left was the state legislator that helped write the bill that created the Sanitation District Act. And our primary purpose in 1923 was to regionally collect wastewater from cities such as Pasadena, Lancaster, Compton, Redondo Beach, clean it up, and to make sure our public health and the environment is in better shape. And people live longer because of this. We did such a great job of it that in the 1940s, post-World War II, the population of LA County was booming. It boomed because of the war effort. And a lot of people who came from places that were cold for the war effort to either be in the military or work in the factories stuck around. And the population grew. And the way people handled trash back in the late 40s, most people had what they called backyard incinerator that you see here on the left. And this was a fancy one. A lot of times they were just big barrels that people burned trash in, and it just exacerbated air quality in LA County. And here's some images back in the day of bad air quality. So the County Board of Supervisors commissioned a study to see what we can do. And one of the things they decided to do was to ban backyard incinerator, but on a parallel track, they had the Sanitation District Act that created our agency amended to allow us to manage solid waste. And one of the key things I want to point out, the act was amended for us to manage solid waste, but we're not allowed to pick up trash. We cannot be a hauler or a collector, but we can manage the trash that's brought to our front door. Since that point, we now manage 20% of LA County's solid waste or refuse. On this chart, you see some of our facilities. We have a couple of closed landfill. We have refuse to energy facilities. We have material recoveries facilities. And what we try to do first and foremost is to recover what's in the waste stream. And this is the centerpiece of our solid waste management system. Here's video going into our Point of Hills material recovery facility that's located at the intersection of the 605 and 60 freeway. This facility was built in 2005. It's a green building. It's fully enclosed. You see the skylights in the roof of the building, and you can see some of the commodities that have been pulled out of the waste stream. And in this building, we try to take refuse, recover as much as we can, so it's diverted from a landfill. And whatever it doesn't, and whatever we can't recover, then is landfill. And we pioneered the modern landfill. We started our landfills in the late 50s. And by the mid to late 60s, we pioneered what people expect in the modern landfill. I'll give you a little bit of landfill a lesson. So when trash, in the old days, landfills were basically, in the 40s and 50s, were basically dumped. When we came in, we wanted to engineer them. So trash would come in, that you see in this layer, and then we'd use heavy equipment to compact it and cover it with soil at the end of the day, because what it's doing is stopping the spread of disease. In that trash, you might have, as health and safety call them, vectors, but they could be rodents or something that could spread disease that's in that landfill. So we cover that trash at the end of the day. And over the years, we learned to, and when that trash is buried, it goes anaerobic. It quickly winds up in a state where all the oxygen has been used up. So microorganisms that live in that anaerobic environment start consuming the organic material and produce methane and CO2. So what we started doing is we started building what we call gas trenches and gas wells. The wells are vertical, the trenches are horizontal, and then we put them on a vacuum and we started pulling out that landfill gas and destroying it so it doesn't get released to the atmosphere. In addition to all this stuff, there's a number of monitoring programs that we have, boundary probes, ambient air monitoring, to make sure we're always a good neighbor. And part of this modern landfill concept is that, we're taking at this landfill, our landfills, we're taking household hazardous, we're taking municipal waste, waste typically from a home, but we don't want household hazardous waste such as paint, car batteries, because they create a problem for us. So in the late 80s, we started the household hazardous waste collection program. And it's an easy way for residents of Los Angeles County to drop off paints, medicines, and so on. And we find that it's more cost effective and protective of the environment if we have these events where people can go in and drop off these items free of charge instead of having them in our waste stream. Genesis, is there anything you want to add about the household hazardous waste program to hype it? There must be an event today.
Yes, and this program, this tour has been brought to you in part by the Household Hazardous Waste Program. Yeah, so as you said, we collect all the household and hazardous and electronic waste that you have at your home, such as computers, old printers that you may have, paints, fluorescent light bulbs. Sharps, we take that, any pharmaceuticals like expired drugs. We want to keep that away from the landfill. So if you go to that website that's listed, but don't go there now. But if you go to that website, you'll see events all over LA County. So we're usually at one different event every weekend, every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 3. We currently have one in Cudahy, but more notably, we have one in Altadena, which is really, really close to actually this Scholl Canyon landfill. So there's one in Altadena next Saturday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And if you have any other questions on like what you can take, feel free to put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A, or you can send me an email and I'll get right back to you. And I think, is that it? Yes, and that concludes our halftime report.
And that was from our sponsor, Genesis, and the Household Hazardous Waste Program, which has been a wonderful program, and where you can help us making sure that our landfills and everything is really in order. So we're going to focus on one of our 2 active landfills. We have 2 active landfills now in our solid waste management portfolio. One is Calabasas, and the one we're going to focus on today is Scholl Canyon Landfill. This landfill opened in March of 1961, and we're looking north on this black and white image that wasn't taken from a drone, from a plane. And if you notice where my cursor is, this is where the landfill operation is at. This landfill is mainly owned by the city of Glendale, small portion owned by Los Angeles County. And then we operate it, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. And we're not the county. People always think we're a county. We're a special district, and our board of directors are the mayors of the different cities that sit on the 24 sanitation district. Those are our bosses, but we've been tasked to operate the landfill on behalf of the city of Glendale and to a lesser degree, Los Angeles County. So when the landfill began, people started refuse started coming in, we started filling in this area, and in particular, this northern area that you see here. So we're looking north here. If you're looking north, the Rose Bowl is a little bit off here to the east. If you can see my cursor, it's a little bit off so this area started being filled, and by 1975, that area was filled. It's called the North Canyon area. And a lot of folks in the area don't realize that's the home of the Scholl Canyon Golf Course. There's about over 126 acres, had about 4.5 million tons of refuse buried there. We landscaped it, we contoured it, and now it's the golf course. There's some tennis courts, there's some ball fields there. But today we're going to look at the active portion of Scholl Canyon landfill that you see here. And so now I'm going to reorient you. So the previous picture was looking north. This is looking east. So here's downtown on a foggy day. Here's where the golf course is at. And here is the active portion of Scholl Canyon landfill. It's a little bit more than 300 acres. As I mentioned, it's owned by the city of Glendale as well as LA County. Right now, it's taking about 1,500 tons per day. It's permitted to take as much as 3,400 tons per day of refuse. And part of the Scholl Canyon story is the Scholl Canyon landfill can only accept refuse from this shaded area that you see here, these communities here, La Crescenta, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, Montrose, Glendale, Pasadena, South Pasadena, and all came about from the city of Glendale in the 80s, who owned the landfill, passed an ordinance to limit the waste shed, or where refuse could come in, because the landfill was getting so much tonnage. So when your hauler collects your trash from one of those areas, the first thing they do, they decide where they want to take the trash. And a lot of times, Scholl Canyon is a great location. The first thing they do is they drive to the Scholl Canyon landfill, which is off the 134 freeway, the Ventura freeway. You get off at Figueroa. First thing, you drive up to the scale house. There's a shot of the scale house, and you can see our folks are friendly as an attendant at Disneyland. The truck or your vehicle is weighed. You pay the tonnage rate, which is about, as you can see on this board, is about $53 or $54 a ton. It's weighed, you pay per ton, and that's on average. And then you head on to the top. And this video has been sped up. We drive very slowly, and as you go up, all right, let's go to the, here's the leisurely drive. And again, this video has been sped up because we don't want to bore you with the long winding road to the top. And notice how the roads have been wet down. So a big part of operating a modern landfill is dust control. And you can see it to the what you see in the foreground is part of the built up landfill. There's trash buried under there, and it's been covered, and we build it from layer to layer, and we're going to the very top. And when you get to the top of the landfill, here's the wonderful panoramic view you get. So here's where trash is being disposed of now. And I want to point out what you see here to the right. Trash has been buried here. This is a couple of days ago. Trash was compacted and covered with dirt. And you can see where the present haulers are taking their trash. And let's take a closer look at that. We have two distinct locations. For the do-it-yourself type, let's say you want to remodel a bathroom or a back cottage, or you have a small business and you have hand loads, you can bring your trash there. But the folks with hand loads, we keep them away. You see it here. We keep them away from the large loads. And those are like bigger vehicles, the hauler in your city. We try to keep the big loads from the hand loads for safety reasons, and they offload here. There's two pieces of equipment we use to build our contour, build our mountain. And this one here is called a compactor. And what you see here is a sheep's foot. And one of the neat things about these virtual tours, we can get really close to the trash, this landfilling operation with video and drone. So here's a cool shot taken by drone. See a large hauler unloading its truck. And then you see these two pieces of equipment. And Scott's our expert on these pieces of equipment. You have the compactor with the sheep foot, and then you have a dozer, a tractor that's really moving the trash around. And the compactor is just kind of like stuffing it and creating a densified cell, because we're going to build this up layer by layer. And the compactor, I always tell people, it's like you're going on a trip and you have a piece of luggage, and it depends on how you pack it, you can put more in it. And this compactor is allowing us to more concisely pack refuse in there. And you can see it moving around. The compactor here with the sheep foot, and then the tractor with the wheels. Pretty cool. It's like if you're an off-roader, this is the perfect job for you. These men and women are really skilled at this. So he's compacting with those metal wheels. And then and this is precisely engineered. They're building these cells to certain elevation. There's a fill plan for the landfill, all our landfill. So there's a final contour and elevation that we have to hit. So they're grading it and building it to a certain height, and it's staked out. So the folks operating it, the equipment, know what they're building it to. And I think before we go on to that, I guess, Genesis, I want to say, are there any questions on what we've seen so far?
Yeah, how long does a layer of waste material remain exposed before they're covered and buried with the soil layer?
Oh, so we cover it at the end of every day. Every day. I mean, I want to show. So yeah, so it's covered at the end of every day. And that's a big part of stopping the spread of any kind of disease that could be in the trash. Any other questions?
Okay, cool. The city of Pasadena, do they take their trash there?
It's part of the waste shed that this Scholl can take, and so it's really up to the haulers for the city of Pasadena if they, so they can take their trash there. Yes.
Okay, and then what? Two more. Okay. I don't see any seagulls. Where are they? This is a great question.
Okay, that's part of the environmental controls, and so, you know, seagulls, I mean, they're great creatures, but we want to keep them out of the trash because they will, they could take, let's say, an old slice of pizza that someone left in the trash. pick it up and then drop it in the backyard of someone else because they're fighting over it. So at our landfills, we've done various things to keep seagulls out. In some landfills, we used to use wires that would string across the surfaces, like almost fishing wire, because it impeded the landing of the seagull. Sometimes we'd use little planes, the remote control plane. But lately what we've been using is falconer. So we just released falcons, and they basically soar around and the seagulls stay away because the birds are there. And that's a way of stopping the spread of disease. So,
I'd like to add a comment on the falconer, because this is a relatively new thing. We've been using bombs and strings to try to divert the seagulls, and they're very, very smart animals, and they come back. They know if we light off a firecracker or something, they know there's a certain time, so we try to mix it up. But when you bring in a falcon, it's a natural predator for the seagulls. And when they see, when the seagulls will typically bring in a few scout birds to check out the lay of the land. And when you bring in a falconer, they get out of there so quickly because they're a natural predator. However, these falconers are trained to where the falcon will go and fly around, but then it'll come back for its food or its reward. So the falcons don't go attack the birds, but just their presence alone it's like an armed security guard in the area. It's really nice.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so we have just one more question before we move on. Where do you get the dirt to cover the layers?
For this case, and Scott can chime in as well, a lot of the dirt now that we're using is imported, is brought in by haulers. There have been different times where you might get it out of a different portion of landfill, but when we went the other day, it seems as if the dirt was mainly brought in, because we'll take clean dirt. And Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about like our collecting clean dirt at our, let's say, our typical landfill?
Yeah, it's if we can import the dirt and then have the people that are bringing in the dirt put it into a location for us, it's a lot more energy efficient. So we have dirt, but it takes the scrapers a while to go grab it, cut it out, and then bring it. So if we're importing dirt, it's a great way for the environment, really, to have them drop it off where we're going to be covering up for daily cover, for example.
And a lot of times people have dirt from a construction job. They may have someplace else in the area, and if they bring it in, so it's a win-win. Any other questions, Genesis?
There are some other questions that will be answered later in the tour.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. She's our traffic officer. All right, we also have a green waste recovery area. So an area where we'll take green waste, we'll mulch it up, and then it's taken off-site to compost. So even though it's Scholl Canyon landfill, we're always thinking, what can we reuse? What can we convert into some type of resource? We also have asphalt that's recycled. So we'll take asphalt, and we need that asphalt. What we do with this asphalt that you see here is we crush it, and we use it to do one of two things: either create what we call a wet weather deck or a winter deck. So the landfill, folks in this big county generating trash every day, hopefully they can recycle. We want to maximize recycling, but the trash doesn't stop because it's raining. So we want to have an area that has asphalt on it so the trucks can safely move around while it's raining. Because if they're moving on, if they're on the dirt area, it gets pretty slippery and slidey and a little bit not as safe as we like. So we use the asphalt to create what we call a winter deck or wet weather deck. And we also use it for roads. And it's been a standard district practice over the year. And Scott, if you want to add anything else, because Scott's the man that he lives and breathes landfills.
Keep going, Basil. You're doing a great job.
Okay. All right. And then the last thing, landfill gas is collected. I mentioned that when the trash is buried, covered with dirt, it goes anaerobic. Basically, it goes, it becomes oxygen free. And so microorganisms that live in the anaerobic environment start taking that organic material and they're consuming it, and they're generating methane and CO2. Well, that landfill gas, that biogas, if it escapes the atmosphere, it can create a problem. So historically, as I talked about, showed on the schematic, we started experimenting and we pioneered like landfill gas collection system. So here's like the tip of the iceberg of our landfill gas collection system. This pipeline is collecting landfill gas. So we have wells that are vertically buried in the trash. We have trenches that are horizontally buried in trash. They're all interconnected. They're all under a vacuum, and we're pulling that out and taking it to be destroyed. Scott, he's Mr. Landfill Gas Collection.
So in our initial mission statement, we talked about converting waste into resources. And so the modern landfill, we take in refuse and we bury it. So that's one conversion of waste, converting waste. The other is, like Basil had mentioned, when you bury trash, it goes anaerobic, and the metabolic byproduct of that is methane. When you compost, you get CO2 and heat if you're a backyard composter. So back in the 60s, we started developing energy recovery schemes. And now to this day, we produce enough electricity by burning this fuel, this renewable fuel, for literally tens of thousands of homes, which is it's part of our mission statement of converting waste into resources.
Yeah, and with this, what we do here, and not at this facility, but like our Point of Hills landfill, we take that landfill gas and we generate power. Here at this landfill, we take all the gas and it's flared at this this flare station, and it's destroyed. So the methane is destroyed, the volatile organic compounds are completely destroyed. And that's how we handle that here at Scholl Canyon landfill. And then this kind of wraps up my spiel. So the future of the landfill. So I want to orient you. So the area you see here is the area that we're presently filling. When this is completely filled, we're going to go over to what we call the main deck, complete the filling and contour, and then we'll turn this landfill over to the owner, City of Glendale, and they have plans to have active ball fields, much the way that if you notice, this is the northern canyon. So this is looking north again. You remember the first aerial shot we saw? We have the golf course that's operated by the City of Glendale, their tennis court. So their idea is to build on to this active ball field complex by having additional ball fields in this area. And when the landfill closes, I mean, we have to continue to recycle even harder. We also have our Point of Hills material recovery facility that refuse can be brought there, still has Calabasas. But as we move forward, we just have to be cognizant of even more recycling and utilizing our Point of Hills material recovery facilities and our other facilities. With that, Genesis, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Okay, you ready?
I hope Scott is.
For you too, Scott. All right, perfect. All right, so we have one raised hand, Kelman. So Kelman, would you like to? Oh, okay, never mind. So, all right, so first question is, what year is the landfill expected to be filled?
The landfill, you know, it's going to be a function of two things: how much refuse comes in and the compaction rate. So I'll give you a good example from the Point of Hills landfill that's now closed. When the Great Recession hit in 2008, our tonnage at Point of Hills went from like 12,000 tons a day to 4,000 tons per day. So really it depends on how much refuse comes in, and that sheep foot, that compactor, because we're really building to a certain elevation. And Scott, correct me. So we're building the contour plan that these guys have to fill to. If they hit to a certain height, then stop. So it's anywhere from 4 to, you know, I don't like to be pinned in, but 4 to, let's say, 8-10 years. But it's really going to be a foot, you know, you might have a weird event and all of a sudden trash doesn't come in. Or conversely, like when we had those fires near the Calabasas landfill, all of a sudden, everyone was knocking at our door because they needed to get rid of debris. So all of a sudden the rate coming into Calabasas went up. So really, my best guess, and Scott, I've talked way too much. You're the guy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Basil. If the tonnage changes, but we're not too far out from Scholl being full. It's a few years. I think, you know, it's a floating target based on tonnage, but it's not going to be open for 20, 30, 40, 100 years like some of these other landfills that have a vast amount of space. So it's coming up on, it's not too far out.
Yeah.
And about how long does it take to like fill up a specific area in the landfill?
I guess
It really depends on the geometry of it. And so we have all of our lifts and cells designed. And so we can fill up a certain cell in a week, and then you go to another cell and then you start adding. So it really varies. We get about 1,400 tons per day. And this is all staked out by surveyors. So we already have it designed. So it's variable. It can take a week for some areas and then a little bit longer or shorter based on the tonnage.
And how deep is that cover when you cover up that area?
The daily cover that you put over the refuse is usually about a foot thick. But then our cells that you build up are around 25 feet, and a lift will be about twice that. So you typically put two cells together to make a lift. So usually around 25 feet.
Okay, great. So the next question is, how do you determine where to put a landfill?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, because it's really, really difficult to locate a landfill. I don't want one in my backyard. You don't want one in your backyard. And so what the districts did years ago, Basil, you can touch on this, is we actually built a remote facility.
Yeah, we have a remote, you know, when the county passed the law that said you can't use backyard incinerator, one of our jobs, I mean, there's still privately owned landfills in addition to ours, but our job is always to be the safety net in terms of solid waste handling, you know, that there's always a place to take the trash. So we have a safety net. We've built a remote landfill called Mesquite Regional Landfill. It's about 200 miles east of here. But we have it there for that contingency if all the other options are closed or people need a lot of landfill. In terms of how do you cite landfill, I mean, if I look at history as predictor of the future, when you look at the landfills, when they were built, a lot of, like Point Hills, a lot of these were remote landfills. And so we try to find a certain type of geography or geology and in remote areas. But as our population increases, you know, remote changes. I mean, when we started landfilling, when the amendment came into effect that allowed us to manage solid waste, there was no 60 freeway. I don't even know if there was a Ventura freeway. So these, in theory, were remote areas. But as the population increases and we have neighbors, we always are, one of our mantras to be a good neighbor. And our newest landfill is 200 miles east of here. But our thing is that that's all, it's a safety net. We want to recycle, we want to reuse as much as possible. We have a food waste recycling program that we started about 6 years ago, because a big part of our waste stream is food waste, and the state wants all that pulled out of landfill or organic. So we have a food waste recycling program, so we all can do our part. Let's recycle food waste. Either if it's still edible, donate it. If it's not, bring it to us where we can put it into a digester. So we all have to do our part.
One of the interesting things that I heard about that we built this landfill 200 miles away was that it'll probably be open for your grandchildren. So all the landfill space in this area will finally be up to capacity. And because of the density of population, there's not going to be any free available land to place our refuse. And so that's probably one that facility will come into play. But I was hearing something, Basil, about it'll probably be our grandchildren when that place finally opens.
Or great grandchildren if we recycle well enough. Yeah.
And someone asked, what is the plan for the other closed landfills, like Puente Hills and Palos Verdes? Are we thinking golf courses, ball fields, etc.?
All right, so I can take, so Palos Verdes closed a number of years ago, I think 1980, it opened in like 57. And we still monitor, but it's the home of the South Coast Botanical Garden. There's an equestrian trail there. So it's become a really valuable open space for the community down there. At Puente Hills, it closed in 2013. And before it closed, we'd also been part of creating the Puente Hills Native Habitat Authority. We donated a couple of 100 acres to that Habitat Authority. They manage about 4,000 acres of land between the 605 and 60 going out to Claremont. So it's created this very important native habitat corridor. And the plan is that Puente Hills will become augment that native corridor. We have money set aside to, because open space, place to go hiking and walking and seeing creatures. I mean, is very important. Some creatures are scarier than others, but it's, the plan for Puente Hills, I mean, we're all in on that, is to create an open space park that nature, birds, and some cases even snakes, because we see them there, bobcats can coexist and people can go hiking and running and so on.
Okay, great. So next question is, how long, if ever, will it take the trash to degrade? And is it slowed down because you cover it every day?
So really what happens, and I'm going to steal Scott's line, it's a variable thing. So the trash that comes in is not homogeneous, it's heterogeneous. So if you had a lot of construction debris, that won't break down, right? That may be concrete. But if you had a lot of food waste or organic material, that's going to break down because those microorganisms will start consuming it. So that's why in these landfills, you also have what we call differential settling. But the breaking down is a function of what comes in, right? Is it construction debris? Is it food waste, organic waste? And it's also a function of how much moisture is in there. The more moisture is in that waste, like we used to have, and Scott, you probably know better, than it used to be a professor from some university, I think University of Arizona, that would come and sample a landfill. And there are times where he would find a newspaper perfectly intact from like 1961. So it's variable because the trash is variable and the amount of moisture in it is variable.
When I was working at Spadra landfill, I've worked at Spadra, Puente, and now in charge of all the landfills. We had to dig up to do some work, and I found a newspaper from the 80s, and it had a 1984 Toyota Corolla, and you could still read it. It was like $29.99, and if we could only have that price right now, But to add to what Basil said is, there's a lot of stuff, and from an observational point of view, the more plastics and non-recyclables that come into the landfill, the longer it's going to take them to break down. So it can be quite a long time for all this stuff to break down. But typically the bacteria like to eat the hamburgers and hot dogs, and they don't like to eat the broccoli and cauliflower, and that takes longer. But then some of the other more complex things like plastics and stuff like that, they just don't like to break down. It may take 30, 40, 50 years or longer.
Yeah.
Okay, and before I move on to the next question, I would like to throw out a poll for everyone who's here to answer. It's just a quick poll to rate today's tour, and we love feedback. So if you have any feedback for us, please email us at the email listed on your poll. So I will just leave that out there while we answer the other questions. So we want to make sure that the next tour is even better and the tour after that's even better. So please feel free to rate us, and if you have additional feedback, send us an email. Thank you. All right, so we got a few questions on the methane that's produced. First, can it be filtered, compressed, and sold? And then second, why isn't it being used to generate energy for the local cities?
So the first question, yes, we do that. We do collect the methane at our Puente Hills landfill. We generate methane at our largest treatment plant. We collect that. at the largest treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant in Carson. Last fall, we started purifying that methane to a level where it's renewable vehicle fuel, and we're dispensing it at a CNG station in the city of Carson. So yes, as Scott mentioned earlier, we're a pioneer in that. So it can be used. In terms of what's happening to the landfill gas here, we're flaring it, and it's really a function, we're operating the site for the city of Glendale, and it's really their call in terms of what will occur with the landfill gas. I don't know if anything I would add.
Do these, oh, did you have anything to add, Scott?
No, actually, the methane that's created, though, it's considered a renewable resource. So to utilize that to the highest benefit, I think would benefit all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So we had a few questions about the free household hazardous waste and electronic waste events that we host throughout LA County.
Were those your friends asking those questions, Genesis?
Yeah. So how, where, and how are those household hazardous waste items disposed of? Is one of the questions. It really depends on the type of hazardous or electronic waste. A lot of the electronic waste is recycled. Then as far as the hazardous, and Scott, feel free to correct me, but
so hazardous waste, we take that to a hazardous waste. It's either combusted or taken to a hazardous waste landfill if we can't recycle from that. But we recycle anywhere from 80 to 100% of the stuff that comes into our HHW roundup.
Exactly. All right. So, and then feel free to go to lacsd.org/HHW to find a local roundup near you. And the other question, oh, is this going to be posted on YouTube? Yes, there will be recording on YouTube. So I will post our URL on the chat so that you can see it. It should be posted no later than Monday. So just check, I'll put the URL, but just check our YouTube page, and or you can check our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so we'll be posting up the link on there. All right, so next questions. We got, oh, does any sorting of waste take place at Scholl?
I think it's what we showed you is minimal, where the green waste will get mulched, asphalt, we will grind that, but there's minimal sorting of waste. That would occur more at our Point of Hills material recovery facility,
But we do have, when you come into the landfill, we do have load checkers, and we have people spotters. So if they see, for example, white goods or tires or anything like that, that may be a prohibited item, that we will separate it out under contract and then remove that stuff. Since it's a class 3 landfill, it's non-hazardous. If we see anything even remotely, our technicians will remove that from the waste stream. And so there are certain things that will get removed out of the waste stream prior to being covered.
And that's a great point. And we also randomly sample a truck. I mean, one of our policies over the year is it's like going through an airport. Someone will get randomly pulled out of a line to check their luggage. So we will also randomly check a load to make sure stuff isn't being brought in that shouldn't be brought in. So it's a deterrent.
Okay, and then a couple questions going back a little bit to flaring. One, can you explain a little bit what flaring means, and what is the cost impact of flaring versus selling the methane?
Yeah, so flaring, just burnt like on your stove at home, you have methane coming into your home on your stove, you light it, you burn it. The flares do essentially the same thing. However, on our flares, we have minimum temperature requirements to ensure that what's ever in that methane or in that landfill gas, because it's more than just methane, gets combusted. And we have to sample that to make sure that it's following our regulatory requirements. And so like I mentioned before, there is a great benefit to utilizing this methane where feasible. And I believe the city of Glendale has been looking into that. We're currently flaring it right now, but they are looking into the beneficial use of that methane rather than just flaring.
Okay, great. So next question, do the cities have to pay fees too to dispose of it in the landfills?
So the fees, and Scott can talk, I mean, it's a tipping fee at the door. So when a hauler comes to that scale and our friendly scale operator greets them, they'll pay a fee anywhere from 54 bucks a ton to something higher if it's hard to handle. But anyone that comes there, whether it be a city or you, if you're doing a do-it-yourself type work, you pay a fee based on weight.
Do you also pay a fee for disposing of dirt?
Yes, we accepted dirt for free for a number of years, and then we started charging a small amount for dirt. And so I'm not sure what that rate is. I think one in the middle of the beginning of the video may show it, but it used to be, we used to bring in dirt for free, but then we started charging a small amount for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it varies
All
from
right.
site to site. I don't remember what the number is.
Okay, cool. So do you track exactly where a load of garbage is buried?
We can, we know, we were talking about each cell gets built every week or every day. So if we know the date that refuse came in, we know where we were working during this certain time. So we can have a certain area that we know that that we were constructing the landfill during that period of time. If we know a date that vehicle came in, we were working on cell 1 or cell 2 or cell 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. So we know a general area where we've been working.
Okay, and then this goes into the next question about do do we work with police, or can you discuss crime and whether different agencies are able to search for evidence of a crime in the landfill if they believe something would be there? And then follow-up question, what happens if you find a body, or have you ever found a body?
Wow.
Well, we work with all sorts of enforcement agencies. If the police call and suspect some type of crime or activities occurred, we will work with them, and we have in the past. So as far as finding bodies in the landfill, I don't know the exact history of that, but I think there has been some cases of foul play. But like we previously talked about, if we know the general area and if the police come in, we will cooperate with them and move to a completely different area of the landfill if necessary, so that investigation will not be impeded.
Yeah. Yeah, if they have a search warrant, we will move to another area and then we'll search for them.
Okay, cool. So the very interesting question. So the next question is, we're going to start talking a little bit more about food waste now. So this one's a little long. My question relates to SB 1383 and organics being diverted from landfills. If, as mandated in this legislation, 75% of all organic materials are diverted from landfills, will this cause a reduction in the gas currently utilized to produce energy? Will it be lessened because you have less organics coming in? And if landfills have landfill gas collection systems, why would the state restrict organics being taken to landfills?
Oh, wow, that's a lot of, I'm going to see if it
I
keeps
can
track of it. The first
I
question
can break
was,
it down for you.
yeah, the first question was, will it
Will
reduce?
this,
Go ahead.
yeah, will this reduction in organic materials also reduce the amount of gas
Yeah, I would
producing
think
energy?
so. That is a case, but it also, the flip side of that, it'll also reduce the amount of waste coming to our landfill. So that's all. I mean, the amount of it will mean more recycling. I want to rephrase that as a positive. It will mean more recycling, either If the food is still edible, it gets donated. If it's not, you either compost it or you put it in anaerobic digesters. And we have anaerobic digesters we have anaerobic digesters at our treatment plant in Carson, and you can capture the methane there. So yes. And then the other question is why take it out of landfill? And maybe I'm a homer. I'm rooting for the home team. Our landfills are extremely well run, and I used to be in our solid waste department, research department, and so and the vacuum system is really good. But there's some landfills still release methane. If it's improperly run, it'll release methane into the atmosphere, and it's a greenhouse gas that's anywhere from 50 to 80 times more disruptive in terms of climate change than CO2. Everyone talks about CO2, but methane is also a greenhouse gas, and it's more disruptive than CO2.
I agree that, however, I think the question also was raised about your methane quality when you divert organics out of a landfill. And the future landfill completely may change. Right now, we have 30 to 50% methane quality, and by diverting these organic wastes out of landfills, now you'll have maybe a 5 or 10% methane quality, and that will negatively impact future power plant production. And so basically it would probably only be a flare, whereas now with having the organics in the landfill, we have that quality enough to run a boiler or a turbine. So that will impact the future of landfills in relation to utilizing that gas for power generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And please feel free to fill out the poll if you haven't already. All right, so the next question is, so we're still talking about food waste. Is this just for restaurants? Can residents bring it in too? There's someone from Canada asking if there's a plan to have people separate food waste with the rest of their trash to be able to help.
I'm not aware. I mean, California, that law SB 1383 requires that by January of next year, in a little bit over 6 months, that every jurisdiction in the state of California should have some type of organics diversion program to meet the targets that I think our caller or attendee brought up. And so, yeah, so what we've done is we have this food waste diversion program that will help remove a huge chunk of this organics. I don't know if I answered the question. I think I didn't answer the question. Rephrase
No,
it.
I think you're good.
Yeah.
They had asked if there's a plan for residents to dispose of their food waste.
So that's going to come from each of the jurisdictions. So each city, each unincorporated area, they have to put together a plan. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have the legal authority to collect waste. That's the hauler. And so the cities have to work with their haulers to figure out how they're going to comply. And we're just here to say, hey, we have a low cost option because we already have our Pointed Hills material recovery facility that we gave you a little taste of in the beginning of our presentation. And then we also have anaerobic digesters. So we have the infrastructure already in place to handle some of this food waste. It won't handle all of what's generated in LA County, but it's probably the lowest cost option. It's the low hanging fruit. So we always encourage our member cities to take advantage of it before it goes.
That's what's nice is like he said, we already have the infrastructure to accept food waste, and we have a pilot facility. It's online. And so that food slurry gets fed into our anaerobic digesters and we get methane out of it. And that continues to supply gas to our power plant.
Yeah, and it's beyond pilot. We've been doing it for 6 years now. And the latest breakthrough was our energy recovery group, which is part of Solid Waste, Scott's group. They started generating vehicle fuel in, I think, November of last year at the gas station that we own at the corner of Sepulveda and Figueroa in the city of Carson. And by the end of this year, that gas station will be, CNG station will be completely run off gas from food waste. It's back to the future.
Can you explain to us a little bit more about the facility that takes in this food waste? Where can we take it? If
Yeah, so what happens, I don't know if I have any, I might have some slides, but what I'll just try to describe it. So we have the Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility that I showed you in the beginning of the tour. So food waste can be brought in there, and there's an area designated where it takes that food waste, it blends it into like a slurry or a smoothie. That slurry or smoothie is then loaded in tanker truck, taken to our treatment plant in Carson, and then that's offloaded in what we call anaerobic digester. The same anaerobic digestion that occurs in the landfill occurs in these concrete tanks. They're about 50 feet in height. I forget the size, but they're quite large. And that food waste or food waste slurry is mixed with the waste from wastewater treatment. And same microorganisms you would find in the landfill are doing their business, but we're collecting all that digester gas and we're using it to power our treatment plant, and what's left over, we're cleaning it up and dispensing it at a gas station. Is that clear enough, or do we need any visuals or anything?
I hope so. And the address, if you wanted to take it, is 131 13130 South Crossroads Parkway. There you go.
That's the Point of Hills
And
Material Recovery Facility.
yeah, because they asked where could we take loads of food waste.
And we'll be
Um,
resuming tours probably in the fall, you guys? Physical
Hopefully.
tours, hopefully in the fall. And that would be great to show the people also the DOTA system. That's what it's called. Our food waste system is called a DOTA, where it slurries and makes that smoothie. And we'll be able to see the whole process via a mezzanine from above, and it'll be very nice.
And
Yeah,
you'll
it's
have
gonna be
Scott's
cool.
info at the end, so you can reach out to Scott if you want to bring food waste to, because Scott, your office is right where that system is at, I think, right? That's where you're located.
Yeah, I like prime rib, and I also like ribeye.
Yeah, well, so you can reach out to Scott and we can get you in touch with someone who could get you in our food waste to energy program.
And is it okay if you put the food waste in plastic bags
Yeah,
when dropping it off at the MRF?
yeah, and that's where when you reach out to us, we'll give you the parameters of what would be the ideal. We want at least 95% by weight to be food waste, and the rest could be plastic and so on, because even what we call source separated food waste has some impurities in it. We don't expect it to be completely clean, but Scott and one of the other folks over there at the Point of Hills MRF can guide you through this process. They can make it easy.
Okay, do you guys want a water break?
I've been,
All right,
I've been,
okay. All right, perfect. Yeah. You good, Scott? All right. So we have our next questions for, you mentioned dust abatement earlier. How do you wet down all the roads in the areas, and how often and where does all the water come from?
We have water trucks on contract with our solid waste facilities. And so these water truck drivers are driving full time all day long to make sure that there is no dust. If AQMD or someone else came out, they can fine you, and it's unhealthy, the dust particles for all of us. So they're full time. I think the Scholl Canyon water source is recycled water, and I believe Calabasas is potable water, and our Puente Hills landfill is recycled water. So we have full-time water truck drivers driving along the main haul routes. And also if we're importing or bringing our soil in from someplace else, they drive those also as a mitigation measure.
Okay, great. And then there was a question about keeping it, if it catches on fire, is it easy for the trash to catch on fire easily if it's dry? If it's too dry?
Typically, the landfill fires occur if something was not caught, like if a battery was dropped in the landfill and it arcs on a piece of metal and a spark is created. And we have our operators that are there all day that monitor that. We actually had a very small fire at Calabasas, I think last week, and it was probably like 5 feet in diameter, and they were able to extinguish it right away because there's a water truck that's nearby while they're doing all the compacting. But the other type of landfill fire is when you bury the trash and air starts getting introduced instead of it being anaerobic. That's when you can have a landfill fire, and it's essentially composting. We don't want composting. We want it to be anaerobic so that you're producing methane instead of carbon dioxide, and those are very rare, and we catch those by our monthly monitoring. So all of our sites are in good condition, but they still can occur.
Great, and you just answered a question on why can't we dispose of our batteries in the landfill, so thank you. So the next question is, how stable is the ground from the closed landfill? Will it crack open in the event of an earthquake?
One of the requirements of constructing a landfill is you have to do all these special investigations on tectonics. For example, if there's an active fault that runs nearby your landfill, that active fault needs to be assessed, and you have to do these special reports that show what can happen if a landfill occurs. So we hire consultants. So we know that at Scholl, there's a couple faults, but they're a couple miles away. I think I forget the name of the faults, but this whole area is seismic. But when we do know where the faults lie at Scholl, we've done studies to determine that if to prevent slope failure and also liquefaction. There's 2 elements to seismicity. Is you want to make sure you don't have slope failure, and also liquefaction, meaning your groundwater levels rise. So we've addressed all those, and you have to conform to the state when you're doing this, and this is all submitted to the regional board and in the county and our local enforcement agencies. So yeah, you have to assess that, especially even newer, a brand new landfill. There's all these steps you have to take and address in order to locate a landfill.
Genesis, we have a lot
Okay.
more questions, huh?
Yeah.
So we'll stay on till we can answer a question, but I think for folks who want to take off, I mean, they've seen the bulk of the presentation, but we'll stay online till we can get through as many of the questions as possible. Thank you for
All right.
sharing that.
So the next question was about another natural event, which is weather. So how does weather such as rain affect the landfill operations, or does it not?
Yes, landfill rain significantly impacts the landfill. And when you design a landfill, you have to design it to convey that stormwater away from it so that it doesn't infiltrate and potentially harm your groundwater sources or oversaturate the trash. So rain events, we have to design our slopes so that they're at a couple percent, and we compact the top of the slope so that that water sheet flows away. We convey it into stormwater channels or pipes, and then at Scholl Canyon, it ultimately gets conveyed off to the LA River. But in this whole stormwater or rain scenario, we have to also treat that stormwater now to make sure that it's clean and not significantly full of mud and other elements or chemicals or whatever, to make sure that it's safe and follows the requirements of our stormwater. So yeah, landfills are very important. Like we talked about seismicity, groundwater protection, air protection, and stormwater is a very important element and regulatory requirement for any landfill.
And Genesis, we'll
Okay.
keep taking questions, but I want to share my last slide. So if they need to reach Scott or anyone else, they have it. So go ahead with your question, Genesis. Let's see.
Okay, so this is another message from our sponsor, the Household Hazardous Waste and Electronic Waste Program. Can we take prescribed any expired medications? The answer is yes. And then the other question is batteries. Yes, you can take them to any household hazardous and electronic waste event. And then the other question, oh, it just left me. All right, old medications, yes. And then computers, yes as well. Okay, next question. Is there a limit, or are there restrictions to what you can build on top of a landfill once it's been closed? And can you talk a little bit about settling specifically? Does the landfill subside when the trash degrades?
Yeah, that's a great question because, for example, our Puente Hills landfill, it's on 500 feet of refuse, and they estimate that the landfill settlement is going to be about 100 feet. So when you want to build a home or a building, that building is designed to maybe move an inch of settlement over the lifetime of the building. It's a very, very, very low amount. So whenever you're building a home, leaning tower of Pisa is a good, probably a good analogy as any. So on landfills, you know, maybe after 100 or a couple hundred years, the settlement from the trash breaking down will have diminished enough to where you can put a structure on it. However, typically we do golf courses, Basil, right? When we have the sports complex, golf courses, parks, those are the things that you can have settlement and it's not going to really affect it that much.
Yeah, you don't want to put a building on a landfill, but it's great open space. It's just a bad, expensive idea because you'll be fixing cracks all the time, unless you want a leaning tower of Glendale or something, you know. So, but it's great.
All right,
open
so
space.
leaning tower, Glendale. All right, so the next question is, how did you get into the job of working with landfills?
I guess that's my question, Basil.
Well, it could be both, but
Yeah.
it's yours mainly, I think.
Yeah, I worked in wastewater for the first half of my career. I worked about, I think, 14, 15 years in wastewater, and I've been in the solid waste side for, I think, 17 years. I just, you know, this is all environmental stewardship. So the water recycling, the wastewater treatment, and solid waste disposal, it's environmental stewardship. So that's been my goal, is to protect the public health and the environment. Those are the number one things, is to protect the public health and the environment. And so it's been a blessing to be in this field. So I've worked on both sides of the stream, or the street, so to speak. And I'm finishing my career in solid waste, which is great.
And I started my career in solid waste doing landfill gas monitoring and landfill gas projections, and I really didn't know much about it. And it was very exciting, and just trying to predict and project what we were going to get. And now I'm, you know, moved over to the planning wastewater side. Yeah. But basically studied engineering, civil engineering, and moved into the field.
And someone asked, how do you get a job as a bulldozer driver? It looks like really like a lot of fun.
I know. I've been. That's a question I've had for Scott.
That's what we were talking about. Yeah.
You know, our power heavy equipment operators usually start like as a refuse site attendant or even a temp laborer. So any way you can get your foot into the door of an agency, once you get your foot in the door, then you can kind of move around laterally, vertically. So, you know, I tell this to a lot of students because I teach over at Rio Hondo College water treatment and wastewater treatment. And I tell them, you don't, you know, a lot of kids want to start as the general manager or president, but you have to remember that it usually takes those folks years and even decades to get to those upper positions. But get your foot in the door anywhere you can. And once they see your work ethic and your personality and how well you do, then the sky's the limit.
Okay, perfect. And we keep getting more questions, so that's great. How do you get a job as a falconer? Since we're on the job topic.
You know, I have a friend actually who's a falconer, and he just had a love of birds. And what he did is he did research, and with the state of California, just like I think it's the Department of Consumer Affairs, there's a licensing requirement to become a falconer, and you have to be an understudy from an actual falconer in order to be able to qualify or get your falconer's license. So it's a love of animals to start, and then you take that a step further. You have to become educated in falconry because they're a very sensitive bird. If you feed them too much, too little, It's those birds are very sensitive on their diet, their habitat. They're very finicky. And so it takes quite a bit of education and then learning, like an apprenticeship program, to become a falconer.
They're beautiful birds. Genesis and I had an opportunity to see them when we went over, and she took a lot of the footage. They're gorgeous birds.
I think I was like too scared to get close, so I didn't take a photo or anything.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on from jobs, how does the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts cover all of its costs from the fees?
So on the solid waste side, most of the money comes from those tipping fees. And then, yeah, for Scholl Canyon landfill, so really most of the cost comes from the tipping fees that we get. For some of our other facilities, if we're generating revenue from the sale of energy or the sale of recycled commodity, that then defrays the cost of operating our facilities.
And when you talked about the MRF facility, where are the recovered materials taken?
So a lot of the stuff that's recycled or recovered is shipped and sold overseas. But the food waste, we talked about that it goes to our largest treatment plant, goes into a digester, we generate power from it. And then what's left over, we compost it with agricultural waste mainly and use it as a soil amendment. What other streams are we? Yeah, I think those are the major streams I can think of, recovered streams.
And I think you had a slide earlier, so everything that's not recycled will be sent to a landfill, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that was the second part of the question. So the next question, as you get more and more food waste going to the Carson facility, that will produce more gas. Do you know if this gas from the Carson plant is allowed to pump into the gas company lines?
So, you got to take baby steps. So last fall, we celebrated because we took that gas and we're now sending it to the gas station, the CNG station we have. But down the road, by all means, if more and more people sign up at the Point of Hills MRF with their source separated food waste, or they bring the food waste slurry to the joint plant in Carson, then one of the things we're looking down at the horizon is put it right in a natural gas pipeline. Like Scott's been saying, it has great value. It's the same methane in your stove that comes out of your stove. But one step at a time.
All right, now going back to the landfill, about how much weight does a truck typically carry, or how much tons?
That's a great question. Typically on the 18 wheelers, you're limited to, I think, 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, and then it goes down from there. So the trash trucks could weigh 20 tons. And then we have, so that it's really variable, but we know that I think the gross vehicle weight rating of big rigs on the road is 80,000 pounds. So that would be the maximum that we would accept. And you see those large 18 wheelers coming into the site. So that would be the maximum weight. And then it would just go down from there, depending on the type of vehicle, the type of trash truck or pickup truck or roll-off truck. So it would be variable, but 80,000 would be the max.
Okay. And then the gas removal pipes, the vents and the wells, do they remain after retiring a landfill?
Yeah, they're there for forever, for the life of the landfill. And once you figure out that there's no more methane being generated out of that well or trench, then you can apply for well abandonment. But until then, we keep those wells there and keep collecting gas. And the minimum requirement right now is about 30 years of post-closure requirements. And then some wells stop producing before then. Some may continue after, which we would continue to need to monitor. So there is a life expectancy of wells and trenches, but we don't want to remove them because they're expensive to install. So we want to keep them there, even if they're at a minimum gas quality or gas flow. We still keep them there. We still monitor them.
All right, so the next question is there seepage into the water table?
You want me so what we have, you know, the land, what we have there is, we have a barrier to the down gradient of the landfill. We have a barrier that goes down, and at that barrier, you know, where it goes into the groundwater table, what we're doing is we're pumping out any moisture and we're sending it to the sewers for treatment. And then on the other side of that barrier, downgrading the barrier, we also have groundwater monitoring well to make sure what we're doing is not negatively impacting the groundwater table. So that's what we have. We didn't show that on the slide. We didn't want to get too wonky, but downgrading of the landfill, we have a barrier that goes down the groundwater table. We're pulling out any moisture that that may be coming out of the landfill. We're sending it to a treatment plant or sewers, and then we're sampling on the other side the groundwater to see that everything is in good shape.
All right, so do you know how Athens services that serves Altadena play into Shoal Canyon? I think it's part of the wayshed.
Yeah.
Not sure what contracts come and go with our waste haulers. And I'm not sure what role right now Athens plays in Shoal Canyon.
I know they
You know, I
deliver to
will
our
say,
facility, but I'm not sure about Shoal. Go ahead, sorry,
yeah,
Jen.
I will say, in one of the videos, I did notice an Athens truck
Okay.
disposing. I know, I saw that, but I don't know if it's from Altadena or from another local city. Is there a plan to start recycling more types of plastic? Have you seen any trend in the residents' recycling behaviors? Is it increasing? Is it stable or declining?
I'm not an expert. I know there are laws that require to hit certain goals, like 75% recycling. Again, the Genesis keeps plugging the household hazardous waste program. I will plug the Point of Hills MRF. The Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility is the foundation of trying to recycle and recover. In addition to the food waste, I think beginning of last year, we put in an automated sorting line that's much faster. It leads to higher purity of the recycled material. And we've been seeing better numbers or getting very higher rates for the bale commodities that we're selling. But I'm not an expert on the plastics. And if you reach out to us in the chat, we can put you in contact with someone who's an expert on that. But the Point of Hills MRF is our one-stop shopping to recover as fast and as clean as possible. So.
And is there something the public can do to encourage that all landfill sites be more ecologically responsible?
You know, landfills are heavily regulated, and so if you have a landfill in California, you're getting a visit by the local enforcement agency. There's regional water quality control boards reports that you have to submit to. So all landfills in this area, in the state especially, are required to conform to certain standards. Does that mean that we have higher standards than everybody else? We have to adhere to those standards like everybody else. Do we take it to another level? We kind of geek out on this stuff because we like it. And so, not to say that they don't like it either, but we do kind of geek out on it. And we have engineers that really, we get into this stuff because that protection of public health and the environment, we carry that, and it's great.
And my favorite geeking out story was the whole history of landfill gas to energy. We had an engineer back in the day in like the 60s or 70s that, hey, I bet you I could run a Christmas tree on this. So as an experiment, he collected landfill gas and he powered a Christmas tree at, I think, Palos Verdes landfill. And they're like, oh, we could take this big time. And in the 80s, we started building these landfill gas to energy facility, but it was totally geeking out. I think his name was Joe Edberg, you know, since he retired. And so,
All right, we have a few more questions left, so they're a little sparsed out in terms of their subjects. Um, hardbound books like encyclopedias, do we put those in the blue bin for recycling or in the black bin for landfill?
I'm not an expert on that.
I would go, it's a paper product, but then it's got the bound book binding around it. I don't know specifically. I tend to just throw my stuff in the blue bin and then let them sort it out, because they're the MRF people that operate these sorting lines. They're the experts. I'm not. I know it's a decent paper product, so I would tend to just throw it in the blue bin. I may be wrong, but that's how usually I operate.
Yeah.
Okay, so up next we have flared gas for 500. How does the flared gas affect our air?
Well, we have strict requirements when we combust fuel, just like in our cars. Our cars have smog equipment on it, so there's limits to unburned hydrocarbons, there's limit to oxides of nitrogen. So there's a whole framework of regulatory requirements that we have to adhere to. And most importantly, on when you're running a flare, is those temperatures. You want to keep those temperatures high so that you get a complete combustion of fuel. So we also do air sampling to make sure that our flares are being combusted, or the breakdown of the products, the combustion products, byproducts, are within the allowable range for our air quality permit. So we adhere to those air quality permit requirements, and that says that you need 99, I forget what percentage offhand, how much combustion there is, how much this, how much that, and we adhere to those strictly. And we also test and maintain our flares on a regular basis to ensure that the louvers are opening to control the amount of air, combustion air, that goes in when you mix the gas in the air. Everything is on our flares is, we call it preventative maintenance. So we're adhering to all the requirements. On that note, I still think that when you can reuse that gas in a beneficial way rather than flaring, it's great. But however, when a landfill does get older, the amount of gas that's produced is so low that it's not feasible to run a power plant, and then it just ends up being combusted.
So Scott keeps plugging this landfill gas to energy thing. So that's your sponsor today.
Yeah, and as that organic matter continues to decompose, is there a void formed by the compacted layer? Does it just keep settling?
It just keeps settling. So that's what we call it, differential settling, because some areas will settle more than others, but it settles as it decomposes. Yeah. And
do you have a problem with rats at Scholl?
I could answer it, but I'll let Scott go first.
We cover up the refuse every day, and so that's one of the requirements of a landfill, is you need to cover it up. Otherwise, you'll get these vermin, and in addition to the seagulls. But we don't have a rat infestation problem there, because we cover up the refuse, for one, right away. In addition to that, what we have is natural predation. We have coyotes, we have bobcats, we have snakes, we have roadrunners, we have the raptors that are flying in the air. And as an engineer at Puente Hills Landfill, whenever I drive out here, I see deer, I see coyotes, I see roadrunners, I see rattlesnakes, I see it all. However, you don't see a predominance of one population like rats or rabbits or any. There's a balance that occurs in these environments, and we're out of there like at 6 p.m. at night, and that's when the animals come in and do their thing. But we make sure we cover the trash. But the natural habitats of the animals, they come in at night and they do their thing. I've been at Puente at night, and it's kind of scary because the coyotes, you hear them, and they let their friends know that you're there. So it's a whole natural environment after we leave that site.
Yeah, and I mean, Scott gave you the really nice answer and the correct answer, but the two things: you compact the trash and you cover it with dirt, you don't have a rat problem. Just that simply. And you can fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I was like, I have questions. I'll leave it at that. Okay. So we talked a little bit about the closure of landfills, and we, you know, a little after that, we still got some more questions about our own future with landfills and or Pasadena, or where is all their trash gonna go once it closes?
Is
Did you
that a
guys just want
question?
to,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, did you guys want to touch on it just a little bit
yeah, so when
more?
the landfill closes, I mean, again, the push is to recycle. We have one planet. We have to think about when we purchase something, what are you going to do with it at its end of life? And we're part of that converting waste into resources. So it's going to go to, right now, it's going to go to Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility where we recycle, and whatever can't be recycled gets landfill. We've built a large landfill, I think we alluded to, out in the desert. That's a fail-safe if we still need to landfill for our great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren's future. But I think the future is recycling. I'm not the expert on it, but I think it behooves us to figure out how to turn waste into resources. And when you look at Scholl or even Point of Hills, where Scott's office is at, when Point of Hills started in 1957, that was farm country. There was no freeway. There are a bunch of people that live around Scott's office, and so we have to adopt that mindset. But we're here. If people are still going to be landfilling 100 years from now, or 50 years, or not recycling, our job is to always have a safety net. We don't want to go back to backyard incinerators or any kind of crazy things like that. So.
Okay, perfect. And that was a great ending to all of our questions. We have a lot of kudos coming into you from the chat. I assume they're all going to Scott because he was fantastic.
Professor Scott.
Professor Scott, yeah. So there's just a lot of, great messages, like love letters coming into you.
So can I plug Scott? So what class do you teach at
Yeah.
Leondo? We want to know.
I teach all the wastewater courses. I teach water treatment and water distribution for the future operators for the sanitation districts in SoCal.
Woo! All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If you have any other questions, please feel free to send us an email at info@lacsd.org. That's the easiest one. So then I can just send it to Scott or to Basil or whoever. So info@lacsd.org if you have any other questions. And thank you for joining us. We were very excited to provide this. So we hope to see you on the next one. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and you'll get to see any notices for the next tour. So again, thank you and have a great weekend.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.